Okay, it is 12:05 p.m., July 14th. We'll call this meeting to order. We'll start off with roll call. Cesar Garay. Present. John Villarreal. Present. Arturo Dominguez. Rafael Dueñas. Present. Julia Ranowski.
He's present online. I saw him, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. George Alkel. Elia Guevara.
Present.
Mayra Hernandez.
Present.
And Ray Roca. Okay, we do have a quorum.
Yes, sir.
We'll move on to the approval of minutes for May 12th. There is no June 22, 2022 minutes due to no quorum. So the approval of minutes for May 12th.
Motion to approve?
Motion by Julian, is there a second? Second by Cesar. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any against? None against? To approve. Do we have any citizen comments, Arnold?
I'm refreshing the page right now, and as of right now, there are no comments submitted, Mr. Chairman.
For the record, Mr. Rodriguez is here.
Mr. Rodriguez, there's a chair. Okay, yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to move up action item 6C. Have a second?
Second.
Second by Mayra. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any against? None against. So we'll start off with action item 6C, which is economic development discussion by Michael Gonzalez, with the Laredo College Economic and Resource Development Senior Director. Michael, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate the time to really share your knowledge with us. The floor is yours.
Absolutely. Is this a good place for me to be, or what's best?
If we can get you on the end, you probably work best.
Sure. Yeah. So excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me on the agenda today. My goal today was really to have a discussion with this group and really just provide this group a little bit of insight from myself, but more than anything else, my appreciation for the work that's being done in this committee. I think it's incredibly important, all the work that's being done. I'm really encouraged that, through the efforts of this group, through the city, through the efforts of the Economic Development Department staff that has been working diligently on all of this, that we're making some critical strides forward in our economic development. And I think we have the right people in the room to get that done. That's the most important part of that. Really, what I want to be able to do, I saw on the agenda today, and I was hoping to be able to hear through that part of the agenda, but if I can stick around, I will, to do that part of it, is that you're working on guidelines around your incentives tools that are available to you. And I can't tell you how important that is to the future of economic development in our city. Having those guidelines creates these identifiable parameters, right, for incentives, and once they're approved by the governing body, helps to do a lot of things. Helps to streamline the process for people interested in taking advantage of these incentives. But I think that one of the biggest things that I've seen working with economic developers across Texas has been the more certainty that we can inject into the plans for potential investors, business owners, and the like, the better we're going to do. And these kinds of guidelines help to inject more certainty into the process. They know what they'll be able to get access to, and I think that's really critically important. It also ensures that we're taking advantage of as many available economic development tools as possible. I know that we're just beginning that process. We've used some of the tools, TERSs and some different incentive agreements. There are more, as we're all aware. And so the more we can help to define those things, the more that we can help to create guidelines around that, I think the further along the path that we'll be in terms of being able to ultimately provide what I would assert to this group is a menu. One of the things that I had seen across the state is different models of how this can work. I've seen menus of incentives, for lack of a better way of saying it, right? And so if you had this business that was looking to come to your city, you had this group of incentives, and it usually leads to some kind of application process so that you can then make it very clear to them what might be available as they come into your city. And I think that the great thing about guidelines is they don't eliminate the case by case. And I think that's really important because you don't know what's going to come next. You don't know how things will morph and change. And so being able to have that flexibility to do case by case is incredibly important in terms of the guidelines. And there are, I don't know what your models look like. I haven't looked at what you're proposing, but there are various models out there, right? There are models with sliding scales. There are models with point systems. There are models that utilize a number of different ways to analyze the investment, the primary jobs that are going to be created, and be able to identify what the benefit could be to your community, and then turn around and assign available incentives based on, again, a set of approved guidelines that a particular business can take advantage of. And so I think that's really, really important. I think my push, my request for this group would be to also consider, and I think we're beginning to do that as a city, right? To also consider beyond the world of attraction, right? I think that we need to help to shore up a lot of what we have as well through business retention and expansion efforts. And I think that one of the things that I've seen, again, coming from the community college, right, from the college system, and also being a part of economic development and small business development, we've seen workforce take a higher place than it maybe has been in the recent history, right? When you started talking about economic development, you know, even 5 years ago, 7 years ago, something like that, you were probably talking a lot about infrastructure, land, the things that you're going to need to move a project forward. And that hasn't changed. That's still very, very important. But workforce was the next thing you thought about after you made sure that you had those things. And I think now it's taking a higher place on the hierarchy than it ever has been, because of the situation we have within the workforce, because of everybody's need to find these additional workers and things about that, things of that nature. And that brings to the forefront, I think, things like reskilling and upskilling, which I think is really important, and how I hope that the college will be able to partner not only with the city like we have through Laredo Cares 1 and Laredo Cares 2, but going forward as some kind of more formalized program that we can put together as a partnership, where these kinds of services for reskilling, upskilling, or initial training for new workers can happen at the college, and we can turn around and customize that to the needs of whatever business that you might have that's interested, whether that's a new business attraction or somebody coming that's already in town that's looking to potentially expand, or that we may be looking to handle some retention efforts. And those things, like I said, are really sort of starting to happen, I think, in various ways. The other thing I would say about this is one of the things that I continue to hear, not necessarily locally, but statewide, as people are implementing these different tools, is the idea that an incentive of some kind is sort of for lack of a better term, a giveaway. You're giving something to the project, or a project that may have already been interested in coming to your city. Or, as another example, when you're looking at establishing some of the tools, which are districts within a particular city, that you're adding an additional cost or tax to certain folks, right? And what I would say is, to this group, is the more that the guidelines can be set for all of those different tools, then you can allow for those constituencies who would be affected to make those decisions, for themselves, right? I mean, if we feel like a group can benefit from one of these additional municipal district tools that are available to us, then that can happen in a very fluid way, because the homework has already been done, right? The how we're going to go about providing guidelines has already been done. And the other bit is that it's about not necessarily giveaways. I would call it all of these things, or additional costs. I would call all of these things investments. That's really ultimately what they are. You've got to invest in order to see these outcomes happen. And where we've seen these outcomes, okay? Yeah. Where we've seen these outcomes flourish, I think has been where that has been recognized, that it is an investment in our city, in ourselves, in our businesses, in what we're doing to move everything forward. And in that regard, I'm excited because some of the work that you're doing in terms of creating guidelines and moving this process forward is coming more in line with what's happening throughout Texas. And what's made Texas a very successful state in terms of business attraction and things of that nature has been a centralized method of going about economic development, right? And providing these tools to the different municipalities and the different areas of the state. And you've seen a lot of these, wins, if you will, of which we've had a few ourselves, right? We've had a few, I think, significant wins in our city in terms of bringing businesses to Laredo. So I'm excited about all of that, and I'm excited to be able to talk to you because as a native Laredoan, as somebody that's been a part of economic development for a lot of my career, whether that's been on the workforce solutions side, on developing small business at the SBDC, or now what I'm doing in terms of Laredo College and the Economic Development Center that's happening there. And having gone through the process of getting certified as a certified economic developer, it has opened my eyes to the potential that my hometown had. We've got even more potential than I knew before, and it really is a matter of us getting through doing this homework that I think happens a lot with this group in this room, and then is approved by our city and our governing body, so that it can be available for enacting as needed, right? And I think that will get us to a place where, as people are considering coming into our city, they'll have all of the entities that are part of this partnership, whether that's our City of Laredo Economic Development Group, Laredo College's Economic Development Group, or the Laredo EDC, we all will have these tools at our disposal to be able to go out to businesses and to attract them or retain them. And the other thing is, let's not forget, I know we don't forget this, we are a super port. We gotta say that. Every time we get a chance to say that, we gotta keep it, just like I tell the college all the time. I tell the college, we gotta talk about having a great university, we gotta talk about having the #1 college, we gotta talk about being a US super port, we gotta talk about these things all the time, so that people remember who we are. And then that begins the conversation. And then the next step in the process is, and in addition to all those things, we've done our homework. And here's what it is. We've got it all ready to go. Because I think ultimately that other half of the pie that I want to explain is, in being a super port, we've got to remember to continue to nurture that business, right? To nurture that industry and to apply these business retention and expansion tools to that industry and all industries that are here locally, because we want to fortify what we have while attracting something new to our city. And we can do both. But it's going to take a team effort, but it starts, I think, with the guidelines work that happens in this group. And so anyway, I think I've probably gone over my time, but I'll just say this. I'm excited at the work that you're doing. I'm excited at the positive direction that we're taking as a committee, as a city, getting these guidelines together. My hope is that down the line, what we'll be able to do is to not have solely a case-by-case situation, or where only some tools have guidelines available to them, but maybe a situation where we can have the tools, all the tools available to us, have a set of guidelines that have been considered, so that we can turn that into a situation where we can tell everybody that in addition to being #1 here and #1 there, and the super port and all these things, and having a very positive and strong business environment and business climate, that we've also done our homework and we're ready to bring you to town. We're ready to have you expand your business here. This is the place you need to invest your dollars. And so anyway, I'm really excited about that. I'm glad to be a small part in terms of Laredo College and the EDC of the work that you all are doing. And I offer my expertise or insight or services, whatever I can do to help this group. I want to be here as another support that you have, because I think it happens as a team that this all gets done. So kudos to you for all the work that you have done. I encourage you to continue to do those things, and I'll be available for any questions you may have.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
What, I know that you said that the LC had a partnership and agreement with the city of Laredo for rescheduling purposes due to CARES 1.0 and 2.0. What funding can the university, the community college provide to the city of Laredo so it doesn't cost the citizens of Laredo more funding? Maybe through the Department of Education or through, Workforce Commission, any grant opportunities in reskilling so we can reduce any significant costs and it could be a true partnership?
I am glad you asked, because the answer to that question is yes, right? We have that. So one of the biggest sources of funding outside of direct pay by businesses, which, believe it or not, is something that happens on a frequent basis, is the Texas Workforce Commission, right? And Texas Workforce Commission has Skills Development Fund grants. Those come in two forms, Skills Development Fund and Skills for Small Business grants. And really, they're similar grants other than the size of the business that they serve. One service serves businesses, 99 employees and smaller, the other larger businesses. And they essentially pay for any training that that business needs within business, what they call business technical or general technical training. We could have a seminar on what that is, but long story short, it's things directly associated with the jobs of those employees and things associated with the performance of those employees that may not be part of their job description, if that makes any sense. And so yes, the funding is there. I use this word loosely, so don't hold me to this one. It has been evergreen, right, to us. It's been there for many years. It's something that the state, in particular TWC, would like us to use more of. And it's a tool that we're using actively today in our EDC with a number of the clients that we have. We have, in fact, a couple of projects, one in particular that we're working on really closely right now, that we're very close to announcing with Medline. Medline is one of our next projects. We're working closely to do skills development fund training for them in both business technical and general technical, and that is going to be funded fully by the Texas Workforce Commission. So that's bringing new funds into our city and helping to provide business retention and expansion services to a fairly large employer, about 400 employees here in Laredo, right? So we're excited about what that can be. Now, I'll tell you that part of the thing that we provide in the Laredo College Economic Development Center is, and it's necessary, is this white glove service that's needed, right? Because some of the forms, requirements, stipulations, and things of that nature of this funding can be confusing. They can be technical, right? When I say business technical versus general technical, you know, the general business person is, you know, not sure what the exact definition of all of that is. And so that's part of what we provide in the LCEDC is we take it from what are your business needs and are you willing to not only provide us in the state of Texas with the requisite data that we're going to need, but also there are requirements of the utilization of this funding. I'll give you just one. One requirement would be that on average, for all employees that are trained, they will see a 1% increase in their salary. So it's on average. So you could give one person a 10% increase or something like that and meet the average, right? You don't have to, it's not an across the board, you know, situation. But there is a requirement like that by the state of Texas to use the funding, right? Another is that employees have to be on the clock while they're training. They can't be outside of their work hours or something like that, right? It's got to be part of the work that they're doing. So that's why I say that white glove service is so important, because we make the confusing paperwork and requirements easy for people to understand. We take the data and the needs that they have, and we're able to communicate alongside them with TWC to get access to this funding. And we've been successful with it. It's just, it really comes down to an analysis for that business of, is it more cost effective for me to meet these parameters the TWC has for me, or to direct pay because the cost is low on this train. And that analysis happens with every project, and then we move forward.
There's a lot that, Michael, thank you for joining us.
Yes, sir.
There's a lot that, benefits us when we learn from other entities who are working on economic development, and we work together, such as was the case with Laredo College in our 380 agreement with, Westpac Avocados. They were able to partner up and provide the education for that. Michael, going forward, in perspective with the city, what are some tools that you think this committee and the Economic Development Department should focus on working with policy and establishing guidelines for?
So there are a number of tools out there. I wouldn't get exhaustive with it, I think in a response to your question, but things like improvement districts and things of that nature, there are, and that's what I was referring to a few minutes ago when I said guidelines across all the tools, right? Because I don't think it's necessary, I mean, we should be strategic about how we go about this because there's gonna be homework at every step along the way, right? But I think that ultimately the ones that do it best and the most thoroughly are the ones that get all the homework done eventually, right? It has to happen over time. So I think that's one thing, but I also think that we can also look at outside of just traditional, let's use that word, traditional economic development tools that are out there. Let's get innovative a little bit, right? Let's look at some other things that can happen. I see things like grant opportunities that are available in some instances for us to take advantage of. And I see Arnold shaking his head a little bit because he knows what I'm talking about. And so here's what I would say about that. And we see this a little bit, but I think in partnership with the city, I think we could see it even more, is instances where as a college, we can take advantage of who we are, right? In terms of being eligible for these different grant opportunities. So when it's required that we be a community college or an institution of higher education, we can be that, right? When it's required that we are an economic development organization, we can be that as well, right? We also have entities like most institutions do that also can qualify as C3 organizations, right? So when we need to do that, we can do that. But also, in partnership with the city, when we need to apply with the city first, right, we can do that as well. So it becomes what is most advantageous, what gives us access to some of these funds to bring new money into what we're doing. But in terms of the traditional economic development tools, that's what I think you're discussing right now. I say it's an all of the above approach. Not that we're going to implement them all, but that we'll have done our homework on all of them, know what we would expect in terms of the guidelines, so that when that part of our city or a particular business that we're working with is ready, we're also ready. We can say we've done our homework on the back end.
Thank you. Anybody like to make final comments?
Thank you for coming. Glad to be here.
Go ahead.
Could I have the floor for a minute?
Of course.
I'd like to mimic Michael's comments about incentives to be standard, transparent, responsive. One thing that I don't know if this group has talked about, when we're dealing with prospects and potential investors and developers and site selectors, and when it comes right down to developing the property, whether it's horizontal or vertical development, permits come up a lot. I think we need to take a look at, not being critical, but I think it's the feedback that I'm getting from the private sector that the permits need to move a little further down the line in customer service with ease of process, timeliness, responsiveness, transparency. A lot of complaints that we're getting with respect to that. And as we continue to attract more and more outside investors, maybe the ones that have been here forever are used to the process. They know the Gillums and the Calades and the Herds, et cetera. But the TPAs and the Majestics, from a developer point of view, they're comparing our community's process with other markets, Dallas, Los Angeles, and other states as well, and they're seeing that we have some work to do. So that's the feedback I wanted to pass to this group.
Very well,
Mr. Dean, I have a question. Have you all surveyed and this goes up for Michael too, have you all ever considered surveying these particular constituency groups so they can give us feedback? Do you have the data to back up what you're saying besides you've heard?
Well, I get the calls. A couple weeks ago, I was getting some panic calls from a large development that was being held up from closing, and their capital partner was sending some signals that if you don't get this done, we're going to back out. And so haven't done formal surveys, no, but I'm getting the calls.
And the only reason where I come from, where did it hurt? Don't tell me that you heard, because that might have been just one call and you're saying you heard. I like to see what is everyone saying of who you're working with. And since I've been in this committee, I continue to hear the same sentiment. So it's been several years, but I continue to ask, give me the data that backs up your statement. Because I also continue to hear, one client told me, and again, I work with thousands of people, I don't go with one student told me. I go with the majority and what is the consensus, so I can then come forward and say, this is the reason why we need to make this work.
Young man, and on that, I'd like to say, I wish Miriam was here. I should have mentioned that earlier. Apologies. She's doing the city's dirty work at GAREM right now. She's representing the city. She's got a presentation today, so she couldn't join us. But on that note, I'm sure Miriam would be happy to tell you that our department, we brought it by Michael. He talked about business retention and expansion. I picked that up at the basics course. Miriam and our admin assistant both attended that course too, and that's something that they brought back. So what we've been doing internally is trying to develop that survey, to go out and visit with those businesses. Yes, of course, that's great. Yes. So that's in the works, and maybe that'd be something that the committee can help put together. But that is plan going forward.
And that's what I was going to add to what, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Go ahead.
But
so, I agree with the whole survey system. What San Antonio does, it's part of their comprehensive plan update. Every time they update it, they're not just surveying residents, they're surveying business owners and developers, and they actually collect all that data every single year, and they update that information. So I know there's been several items on council agenda to discuss essentially updating the comprehensive plan. I think that piece shouldn't be siloed to just the economic development department. I think that is part of that big project of updating that and building in a survey system so that we can constantly collect data.
Right on, Jimmy. Yeah.
Well, and what I was going to add to that is, Myra, I think you're right on track. In other words, you got to make decisions, based on the data that's there. And I think the survey process is, a project that should be done, right? It's something that should be a part of that. The great thing is we have conduits that are there, right? We have, Gene and the membership of the Laredo EDC that's part of that. We have, our Chamber of Commerce and the membership of that group. And so that's already covering some major areas. Then we can take it out beyond that, right? As a function of maybe like Julian's talking about, something a little broader than that, to then extract the data for the individual areas where that's needed. But yes, I think that's something that we need to go beyond, I guess, anecdotal and go into data that we have.
I'm sorry, what's your name? I don't think that.
Me?
Yes.
Riasul.
Okay, so I have a question. What is the city doing to ensure that decisions are made based on data? Is it just someone thinks and does something, or how do you run the economic process? Yeah. How are decisions made at the executive level?
I mean, it's a data driven. You don't make decisions just right at the moment. You have to have the data. And that's what we're talking about. Yeah, we get all kind of complaints, the permits and all those things. But we met with all the developers, everything. So you heard one side of the story, you don't get the full story. I mean, we are open to anybody has any projects to sit down. But it's in both ways. We can't just give a permit, whatever you submit. We have to review it, and that needs to be looked at. So every project is different. And definitely, so what he talked about a closing document, that's not even our hand. Once we get everything done, it submits to planning department, they go record the plat. If the engineer and the developer doesn't follow through, we can go and record the plan. So it's a both way. We definitely want to hear those, but I tell you the truth, nobody, I met with all those big builders, nobody can come forward and say, oh, this is the problem. This is your problem, not my problem. So everybody blames on the city. It takes you 30 days. Go to San Antonio, see how long it takes to get a permit.
So there's no, per se, there's potentially no system in place where there's an application process, you go through the process, there's no system internally to the planning or building department. You submit your application and there's a system where somebody can log in and see where
Oh, yeah,
you're
there
at.
is. There
And
is.
then at the end, once everything's completed, there's no follow-up in terms of sending a survey. Kind of like the retail industry, as soon as you buy it right off the bat, you get an email saying, how was your online
That would
experience?
be good.
Do we have something, some mechanism for all city departments to find out what was their experience right off the bat? I don't want something that you're gonna send me in 30, 60 days. Retail industry, I push, purchase, and the next minute I get an email, what is your satisfaction level? And again, and because it's done so quickly, you also, and again, I'm thinking about the generation that we work with, that's what they're accustomed to. You send me a survey, and you send it to me immediately, I'm checking my purchase, and then I probably get that survey first, and I can answer it right away, oh, this was fantastic, or, it was not good. And you can get quick feedback, and then you can actually analyze it, so now you can have an annual, review of your comprehensive plan, versus here we have been for years, and we are not even following that comprehensive plan that cost us so much money and time.
I don't think on the building permit, we don't have, but we can look at it, because we just implemented new software, I'm sure they probably have the capabilities. But we'll definitely look at it.
That's great. I think we have a lot of homework to do as a committee as well. We can definitely play a big role in all of this, in looking at priority tools, in setting up data, setting up a consensus of what we've heard, rather than just bringing up, I guess, kind of dinner talk. So that's our real goal here, right? It's bringing up projects, it's bringing up hearing the consensus of the people, and trying to find out some solutions and working together, as well as implementing policy. So Michael, you've been a strong advocate for economic development, for the workforce, and we want to thank you for your time here, coming to share with us, as well as continue this dialogue and partnership and friendship with the committee and with the city.
Absolutely, and if I could, I just want to say thank you for having me first and foremost. But yes, there's homework to be done, but the great thing is it's getting done. This is the group, that's doing a lot of that, and so alongside with our city staff and everybody that's a part of this, like we have the right people in the room. Let's not forget that. I mean, I think, again, I'm a native Laredo, and a lot of times I think we're always looking at, oh, there's this next problem to deal with. I think we should afford ourselves the 5 seconds to take a deep breath, to turn around, and you never talk about this, right? Take a deep breath, turn around, and go, wow, look at what we built, right? Look at how far we've come. And then use that momentum to take us forward as we continue through this process of getting this homework done that we need to get done. Because it's, you gotta eat the elephant one bite at a time, right? And so it's just a matter of that. So kudos to you, kudos to your team here, this committee, for doing the work, and to all the partners that are part of it, and thank you for letting me be your presenter today.
Thanks, Mike.
Appreciate it. Thank you guys.
Hopefully you can come to all of our meetings. Want some help?
Yeah.
What about, I'd like to say, just reiterate what Gene said, we do get some large companies that bring in a lot of employment to the city, and we do need to, be a little bit more, try and move the process faster, because they have options, they could move, there are people that could hire 100 people, and of course, I agree with Maida, we need to go back and say, look, this is, in a realistic world, this should take 30 days from the start to the end. But we're taking 45, 60, and you're absolutely correct. It's on both sides, because it's the city, and then there's the developer or the company that's coming in, and there's many documents. Sometimes there's certain documents that are required, others. I mean, I'm in the lending area, and I understand fully what Gene is saying, because sometimes
you don't push the process, it doesn't get done, or it just sort of lags behind. But it's always good to be pushing that process to get things done more efficiently.
It's different when they ask you for something and you say, well, I asked them that I needed this, and he never came back as to, wait, what happened, how can I help you? I mean, just pushing it to, I mean, on behalf of the city, not just, oh, he had some homework and he never came back.
Yeah.
Instead of
Follow through.
follow through and follow through, I mean,
Would that be, perhaps a lack, potentially, I'm not saying that is, but a lack of personnel?
No, in the
Qualified
building,
personnel?
in the building permitting process, now it's there because we have the new software. And so I instructed not just the contractor to also email it to the owner, because a lot of the time what this contractor does, the owner doesn't know that he is sitting on it. So we implement, because in the permitting process, when you submit an application, you put your owner's name, your contractor's name. So we are actually, every time there is an issue, we're sending an email to the owners too. Say, hey, we are waiting for this modification on this plan, page number 5. Because it happens a lot of the time, the contractor or architect is working on different projects, so he doesn't have time. But he's telling owner, oh, I'm waiting for city.
We do have two more, action items, so we'll start to wrap up, but before we did ask for Lauren to share some stuff. He's our planning and zoning director here.
Orlando Navarro, planning director for the city of Laredo. I know some faces in here at this long time, friends, but, I just, a comment to what you all talked about. One of the confusions is building and planning are two separate departments. The planning department comes first, then the building department. I'm gonna give you an example of some customer service. Yesterday, we get a phone call because there's a restaurant in town that wants to remodel. They called yesterday, they said, we'd like to have a meeting because we wanna do a pre-development meeting. What are some of the issues that we have to look out for? This is an engineer calling us from Dallas. So every Thursday, we have a meeting with all directors in my office, and we go over all these different plans that are coming in. So we told them, well, we have a meeting tomorrow, and they said, great, we're flying down. So they're flying in. I told them they could do Zoom, but they'll be here at 1:30. We have a sit down with them, and that's a pre-development meeting, so they can understand all the different things they have to do. A lot of the problems that I get with people is everybody considers a new development project to start at construction. It does not start at construction. It starts almost a year in advance. So when you have somebody that says, man, they're taking forever, they're taking 2 months, we should be taking a year. 2 months is fast.
where does it say that you have to take a year?
Because there's a lot of, what I'm saying is, the part of the city process is part of the timeline of your business plan. Okay? So you have to come in and talk about your property. Is it platted? Is it annexed into the city? Is it zoned property? All that has to be taken care of first. Okay? If it hasn't, you have to go through that process. If you have a piece of land that it's not annexed in the city, you have to petition to get it annexed in the city, and we do that twice a year. So you only 2 times a year that you can do that, right? So you have that process. So let's say you have a piece of property that's not annexed in the city. That creates, we do it January and July, so let's say July, so you have, and it takes 6 months to get done. You have that process. Then you have to go through the planning process. Our planning process is on 2-week cycles, okay, to go to city council. So they submit to us, we have to go through preliminary at P&Z, then it goes to the one-stop shop to get reviewed, then it comes back to P&Z, then it goes to city council. And if it's a plan, it stays with P&Z. Then is it zone property? So they have to go through a zone process, and they get that done. That happens in every city, okay? So that is not time, that's the process. So when somebody comes in and says, how long does it take? That's the process. Did you do your research? So this company that's coming today, we're gonna tell them all that. We're gonna give them the calendar, when submittal dates are, everything that has to happen so that they can put that in their business plan in order to come forward. People come in and they don't prepare for that. And if they don't prepare for that, then you get the discussion, well, it's taking forever. And sometimes, just recently, we had the economic development group. They went to Fort Worth for the International College Shopping Center. I sent a planner with them because it's important that anybody who wants to come to Laredo, we speak to their engineers, way in advance, because we need to do that. If we can talk to them way in advance, then when they come in, now it becomes a shorter process. Now we can do that. That's great. We have, in 3 weeks, we have a meeting coming up with engineers here in town to bring them in so we can talk about some of the issues that they're having, to hopefully renew that. I don't come from the city sector. I come from the private sector, so I live the other side, so I know the headaches, so I'm bringing them in to talk to them about it. But what I've seen here is a lot of misunderstanding of your business plan and how you establish your business plan. And when somebody comes in and I ask them, in your business plan, how much time did you give to get your city permits? And they're like, what? Then I know, this is a person that's gonna complain, because they're gonna say it's taking too long. And then we have problems.
I mean, I guess you have to differentiate between like, what you're saying, more like land development, getting it up, or you have a property like a Pinnacle that's ready to be, you know, it's already platted, it's lot and block, it's just a matter of getting the permit to put a warehouse in. So that process should be a lot shorter.
Yeah.
Right, I understand where you're.
Julian, go ahead.
If I can go further on that, so that's a question that I'm curious about, because I'm going through, I've done plating here in Laredo and I've done it in San Antonio, and plating takes minimum 6 months, typically. That's the best case scenario. But on a platted, so I have 2 comments, or one question and one comment. On a platted property that's done, that's ready to go, you know, goes to the architects for design and everything, do we have the data that says what the typical amount takes from, you know, if someone submits signed and sealed perfect drawings, what is the timeline from that point on?
So there's 2. Are you talking, okay, the question that you had, that's why I started by saying planning and building are 2 separate. Because mine goes up to a certain point, and I guess you'd say I pass the baton and then it becomes buildings. Right. At that point. Are you asking from a building or from a plan?
I'm asking the wrong, you are correct. It's more of a building question. I'm thinking throughout the entire process. You're right. That is the building. Now, when it comes to giving out, so here's my follow-up question. When it comes to giving out business certificates to open, is that building or planning?
Yeah, that's all building.
That's
So
building.
the way I tell people is, I don't know if you can see me, but planning, we deal with the land like this. Building deals with the vertical construction of the buildings. It's 2 different departments.
And so you're coming from an unplatted raw land.
Get it ready,
Get it,
put a building.
the planning process, so now you can put,
We worry about the streets, making sure that there's sewer lines, water lines, all that stuff, preparing that building to be put in. And so our meeting today, we're gonna discuss all the departments. And it'll start from the ground all the way till the city.
and I think where Gene was coming from is that there's companies that are coming in, the properties are already platted, so it's really more on the building side. So the properties are platted, it's just going in and putting there's some that are putting in what, million square feet space.
Yeah, we have issues, and we definitely have issues. We have a building that's coming in that's 458,000 square feet. A Walmart is 50,000. So it gives you the idea of how big these buildings are, and they come with concerns. Big concerns are huge buildings.
I know we could keep this discussion for hours and hours. I do want to be respectful of everybody's time. It's almost 10 till 1. We can go ahead and bring in planning next month as well. And anything else that you guys want to put on next month's agenda, or we can have special meetings as well. But this is great that we're getting some really good feedback.
But why not, I mean, I hear a lot of things about building permit. Okay. So why not bring the building director, and we go through a plat, not a plat, a building permit process, so we can show you how long and what was the holdup. So I'll bring John, and we'll show you the
We
process.
appreciate that, because we have reached out a few times. I think about 2-3 months we've been trying to reach out. So if we can do that for us, that would be phenomenal. And I think we could get some real data on our next item, which is action item 6A, the review of the MEC policy recommendation with discussion of possible action by Junior Ranowski, our EDAC Vice Chair.
Well,
I've got,
yeah.
yeah, so.
This is still on the city's side. I don't know where we're at.
Yeah, so we did have a meeting Mr. Chairman, with the building department, more specifically, the officials, that are overseeing the NEZ, we had city management there. We did go over, Julian, the sheet that you provided. We went over bullet point by bullet point and considered each one. And then now we're bringing back to the committee, sorry, I didn't know till last minute, Julian, you were gonna be online. I did provide in the packets a copy of what you provided, also with some, they're color coded on what's green and what's red and stuff. So if you've got a copy in front of you, if not, I'll try to get you one when the meeting's done so you can see what we're talking about, or if you can follow us on the copy you have.
I only have a copy that has no colors on it.
Okay.
Sent to me.
Take a picture and email it.
Text
it to him.
Text it to him.
I'm not even joking. Take a photo and send it to me.
I'll do it.
Yeah, okay, I appreciate it. Okay, so, committee members, if I may, Mr. Chairman, so what you have in front of you, what's not highlighted, and what I mean is the bullet points that are not highlighted, or that don't have color anyway, are what the building department is indicating that are already included in the NEZ policy. So we just kind of, went through it, hey, that's already included, we just jumped to the next
What's
bullet.
that, I'm sorry?
The ones that are not colored,
Okay.
they're included in the current policy, or that they're stating that are included in the current policy. So if there's anything in there that you see, Julian, once you get the picture, if there's something in there that you think that's not in the policy, and maybe that they overlooked that should be, if you can bring it back to us so we can bring it back
Do
up.
that through an email, Arnold, and I do want to publicly thank, Miriam for taking this up and
Yeah,
really working through this. We've had this since last year. Brent Minority came on board, and I think this was one of his first meetings, and we were close to sending it to legal department, but then there was just a lot of changes. So thank you to the department. I was focusing a lot on the housing aspect. Julian had some amendments on the commercial side. Do we just send that through an email of what we'd like to see implemented in this policy, or do we?
I mean, you can, I would just like to bring up, maybe just what's red and what's green, just to bring it to the attention of the committee, what the concerns were and what we're expecting from the committee to just clarify. So the first one we're looking at, Julian, is under the eligibility to apply for the NEZ certification, the very last one, that can't tear down a 50-plus-year-old improvement. They did not agree with that only because they found, and they're under the opinion that old doesn't necessarily mean that it has value or is historic. So, if there's something else that maybe the committee wants to clarify that can, maybe make that included, or if we're just gonna omit it.
So the clarification on that was discussed, and I'm not sure who had the meeting notes on that, but basically, if from my understanding, if you want to tear a building down of a certain age, it has to go through historic to begin with. So, it's basically on historic to approve it or decline it. We just don't want historic to be bypassed in those circumstances. That was the point of having that item in there. It wasn't to just outright not allow it moving forward.
Okay, good. Yes, and that's something that we can bring back up with the building department. And I'm sure they would have, something different to say on that.
Yeah.
Good point, Julian. Thanks.
Further discussion?
For that one?
So like on that one, I mean, planning and zoning versus the building department, I don't know why you have planning and zoning there. Tear down.
We oversee the historic board,
Oh, you do? Okay.
so, if it's in the historic district, and so he wants to tear something down, it'll be brought to our attention, and we bring it to the board.
And like, what is
This
it one?
No, go ahead.
50 plus, but it's outside of the historic, district, then
That would be up to the building department.
so that wouldn't be the planning and zoning.
That would, yeah, you have to distinguish between the historic district.
Yeah, because here it says from planning and zoning, so I
Yep.
don't know.
Yeah, that's the way the item was written, but, Mr. Navarro, what it's saying here is that if it's 50 or older, regardless if it's in the district or not in the district, more specifically outside the historic district, that they don't want them to tear it down.
So my.
Yes, because you can have historic buildings outside of a historic district. So we don't, remember, these are guidelines, and the point of the guidelines is these can always be overruled. So If there's a property that's not really considered historic, that's over 50 years, that's fine, council can rule on that. But we just don't want to make it easy to go in and demolish, like the Evelyn Hotel that was demoed, which was over 50 years and obviously a historic building. That should not have been, not that it was, but that should not be incentivized to demo something that historic under this policy.
I hear you.
The way the state, reads the 50 years is, if it's 50 years or older, they can apply to become a historic building with the state of Texas. That's one of the criteria, is to be 50 years or older. Not necessarily jumping into 50 years, 50 years to apply to become a historic, a recognized historic, business by the state of Texas. And then at that point, then, if they pass the application process, then it becomes historic.
I'm reading this one, that if you wanna apply to NEZ, that means you wanna get some fee waive, those are the things that you have to follow something. But if you don't wanna apply for NEZ, you can go ahead and do it. So I really don't see any problem with that, because you want me to give you something, you have to.
Exactly.
I don't see we have any problem with that. Don't wanna have NEZ, then go ahead and tear down whatever you wanna do.
Exactly, this is for the incentive. If you're gonna, once again, this is tearing down a building and then getting an incentive to build something else. We need to check and make sure. Now, it's not, maybe that building is over 50 years old, but it's just a warehouse. That's fine.
We're gonna keep that in as opposed to strike it out.
That's my recommendation. It's up to the entire group.
And the other part is that if it's not in historical district, then it's gotta go through the building department versus it's from planning and zoning or building department.
We don't have any action item on this, just kind of point of reference notes. Anyone wants to make some amendments or no?
I think is that the recommendation, to keep this point in there? Is that the agreement of the committee?
Motion by Mr. Ramos, by Mr. Villarreal.
Second.
Well, it's the only way you can do it.
Yeah, no, it says discussion and possible action. So,
But in other words, if it's in a non-historical district, the way it reads, it's for planning and zoning, and that's incorrect. It's gotta go through the building department.
Yes.
So then we want to keep it, maybe rewrite it, and then bring it back before the
To
committee?
be accurate,
Okay.
we can get you the word.
Because if council approved that, that could be part of the checklist of the NEC.
Yes, sir.
And I don't know
Building is
if it's
50-year-old or not,
Yes,
you could check in.
table is protects.
We'll make that move by Mr. Villarreal, seconded by General Lopski, for the discussion, just kind of highlighting, but reiterating again, any further amendments after, do your homework properly. You can send them through email to Arnold.
Okay.
He'll bring a drafted document, a little bit more updated, and then we can continue to working on this. Get some good feedback from the board as well, which we should be here next month, said Mr. Leah. So with all that said, we'll move for the call. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any against? None heard, motion carries unanimously. Move on to action item 6B, 5B, discussion with possible action regarding the City of Laredo tourist policy. Again, by our Vice Chair, Gilmore Lofsky.
wait, hold on, I'm lost on that motion. Are we basically on the previous item A? Can we open that back up? Because are we essentially accepting that all these things that they put X's on, we're not gonna include?
No, I think you can repeat your motion, to emphasize that one point.
Yeah, that's one point, but I think we need to table it to maybe, because there's a bunch of points in here.
There's a lot of Xed items in here that are all important.
So we'll do two separate motions. The first one was to ensure that that point gets stayed that was already approved. The second would be to update it and bring it back to the committee.
Yeah.
Because I can give you a minute version of the X's, what the note is on, and then what the green means. If
I
that
can
is,
see where it can take, I mean, the first one we got,
yeah,
I mean, I can see where this can take, 30 minutes.
And can I make a motion to extend the 1 hour so we can get this thing done?
We can extend it, or
That's up to you guys. Y'all-
Second.
so y'all wanna continue, we can continue, so.
And 15 minutes, I mean, so I'll see how much.
Oh, go ahead, Marco, we'll let us know. We'll stay on six A then.
Okay, all right, moving down under incentives available in an NEZ, the first X mark multifamily development project on 5 or more units. That one, they recommended not to put that way, Julian, because in the current policy, it already exists for 4 or more. So it would make more, make more sense to put that 3 or more if you wanted to lower it, but at 4 or more, it's already eligible.
So multifamily by definition is 5 or more, not 4 or more units. So I'm a little confused by the definition of the city then.
Okay, got you.
So.
Get clarification on that one.
There's 1 of 4 residential, like you say.
So I think we stick to that because that is the definition of multifamily.
That would make sense. Yes, sir, you're right. Okay, on the next one.
I just want to.
Yes, sir.
There used to be a starting, like, price on your renovation, but it didn't have a cap, so in order to get the tax abatement, you have to buy a $250,000 property per se. Are we eliminating costs of investment? Because there's nothing here.
It's not, so to qualify for the neighborhood empowerment zone, it's not on the investment, it's on the improvement. So if a property is valued at $100,000, for example, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, you have to invest 30%, right? Is that what our number's at right now? Or is it 40%? To qualify.
We don't have any of that documentation in this policy, which is exactly what I'm trying to get across.
Well, the thing that you and I discussed, Rafa, was to actually just, we can outright remove it. But the only problem with making it so low is like, you only get one chance to apply for NEZ. So if you make, let's say you buy a $100,000 property and you want to freeze your tax rate and you improve your fence and that's $5,000, right? And you go and apply, but the next year you add a 3rd bedroom, you can no longer apply anymore. So there is some logic to having some form of a minimum, but I do agree that the current minimum, I think it was over 30%, should be lowered, especially because the appraisal values have been hiked up so high, it's kind of like hard to like resemble those numbers today.
Yeah, you make a good point. I also think we should add a cap, if we can add that into those minutes already.
Yes, sir.
The whole point is to make affordable housing and incentivize affordable housing, making sure that the citizens have this. So personally, I don't think that we should be incentivizing a project that's gonna be 800 grand or anything around those lines.
So a cap on the improvement, dollar amount on the improvement.
I'm okay with that as long as it's only for single family. Because when you're talking about affordable multifamily, which every city is, but Laredo is especially suffering from, you're leaving those projects out. Because those are gonna be, $1 million developments, but there are multiple units. So I'm okay with that as long as it's on the single family.
Yeah, now, on this incentive available in the NEZ, where you have, the green, if you have the first one existing or new owner occupied single family, doesn't say 1 of 4, then you have the quadplex, so you have a 1 unit and a 4 unit, so you don't have a 2 or a 3. The way I read it. Or existing or new owner occupied 1 of 4 single family.
So the reason it's stipulated this way is it's referring to, the idea is that you fix one home. You don't go in and you apply to this policy and you develop a bunch of single family homes and then sell those. It's against incentivizing that. So that's why it's referring to an existing family property and then it jumps to a quadplex on a single lot. which is, that's the 4 units versus the multifamily, which is 5. That's why those are shown
But there,
that way.
but here, but when you say owner occupied single family property, you only say 1 unit, right?
Yes.
How about a duplex or a triplex? There's nothing in here, because then you skip to a quadplex.
I
You don't
understand
have
what you're saying.
anything for a biplex.
I agree with you, the duplex should be allowed, if the owner lives there.
Yeah,
and wants
so
to
in there, it doesn't have duplex or triplex, just that,
As long as they live there, the owner.
Right.
He can rent
Yes.
1 or 2. I think that should be allowed.
Perfect.
I agree with that, John.
Okay.
That
And
happened.
the greens, by the way, obviously green means go, right? Those are ones that they are okay with. So if you see those throughout, that's what that means. The next red X commercial, up to 5,000 square foot maximum. The recommendation from the building department was to not include a max, unless there's another maximum amount that you may want to pitch back to the building department for consideration.
So, the reason NEZs are not supposed to be used for commercial developments, there's logic behind that. And the incentive that the NEZ will still allow is the idea, and it's the next item, mixed-use development projects, meaning, that's fine, you can do 10,000 square feet of commercial, but then it better have like residents above it. So I do believe we actually should stand strong on that, because it actually goes against what Texas defines neighborhood empowerment zones should do. They're mainly targeted for housing, not commercial.
Okay, so I hear you. So if they're gonna do a mixed-use development, set a max cap of the square footage on what they're allowed to use as the commercial.
No, those are 2 separate, the moment it's a mixed use, it's a mixed use.
Jenny, we have, wanted to say something?
So
Oh.
Julian, do you wanna combine those 2, that it has to be mixed use, but the commercial cannot be more than 5,000 square feet?
No, because we're talking about ratios at that point. You can have a development that has 10,000 square feet but of retail, but then is putting 100 units above it. So it just wouldn't make sense if you capped it at 5,000. Because the footprint of that building, which is first floor is typically commercial, would be a lot larger.
Your recommendation is to keep that one, Julian, as it is, as it reads?
That's my sole recommendation, because remember, that is highlighting just pure commercial, which it should not be incentivizing to begin with.
But we already say no, so it's strike. So, any of you wanna make a motion to strike that one out, so?
Actually, really, you know what we'll do? So we do have an NEZ subcommittee. We can actually reconvene once we close out this general meeting and start to give those proposals to Arnold, who could then bring it back as a whole, to the committee. Y'all can bring up a special committee meeting or, do it in the general. But I do, for the sake of time, I'd rather close out the general meeting that we have, let the subcommittee reconvene if we want to immediately after, continue going over those points, and then bring it back to the general committee for everybody's full approval. And that
That
way we
works.
don't have to feel rushed with developing a full policy that's gonna be, established for years to come in 15 minutes.
Right.
And I know there's a whole process that we're gonna get building involved and everything.
Yeah.
But at least in the thought process of the subcommittee, I don't want it to feel pressured as well.
Okay, so what I'll do too is I'll do this again and just put the notes on the side.
Yeah, we'll do this
Right.
right.
You can send those notes to us, Arnold. I can't remember everyone that was on it, but I think I'm gonna have to look at my notes to see who's on the subcommittee.
Me, John, Arturo, and yourself.
Oh, okay, there you go. Good
So
memory.
I'll move to close 5A and have the subcommittee, get together. That's a motion,
You still have 5B.
and we'll move on to 5B then. Discussion 5B, discussion of possible action regarding the city of Laredo church policy.
So I don't, yeah, I think this is an old, I'm not sure if you put this on your laptop from the last meeting we were supposed to have, but the last update we had, we're waiting on staff to come back to us on this one too. There's no other update besides what we gave last time, which was that that the individual the city hired was not gonna work for what we were trying to do.
Right, and then we broke out into the subcommittees and if I'm wrong, correct me, Julian, but
Okay.
from what I remember is that the subcommittee was supposed to meet on this and come back with some ideas that we could incorporate into a RFQ, to shoot out, kind of highlighting what we wanted to focus on in the RFQ, so that the city can do our part and actually publish that.
Yes, you're correct. We were waiting, I don't know what happened, but we were waiting for someone for the city to basically give us the time. I have to go back to the last meeting, but I've been waiting for a meeting with the city on this one, so I don't know what happened.
Gary, I'll coordinate with you, Julian.
Yeah.
I can call you after this, or you can call me
Yeah.
tomorrow, whenever you want to, and we'll set that up, my friend.
Oh, yeah, we'll jump on a line and we'll get that scheduled.
You got it.
Okay. So just to kind of go over, we made sure that his motion was passed, to ensure that that doesn't get struck out
Yes.
as a priority.
Mhm.
And then aside from that, if the NEZ item is tabled, that will be going on for further discussion and brought up either for a special meeting if time needed, or for the next general meeting. Okay. Aside from that, anybody have any closing remarks? Anybody want to say?
Because you mentioned the Evelyn Hotel. The history of the Evelyn Hotel, we had a man that came in, he wanted to change it, so, right? He wanted a B4 zone, which is more for highway.
Mm-hmm.
So we denied him that zone change. So we denied the zone change, he was trying to be in front of the bus stop, and didn't work out. We were kind of hoping he would register it as a historic building, and the man didn't want to do that, and he ended up tearing down the building. I don't care who teared down. We kept the sign, So, because we also had battled to protect the historic area. That happens, the guy clears the land, which created an opportunity, and now we have a national chain hotel that wants to be put there. So, even though the interest was to maintain that historic hotel, and we tried our best to do it, and we didn't, you have that, you created an opportunity in Laredo to bring economic growth. So, I don't want to say it's a happy ending, we're not there yet, but at least it was, you got somewhere with that. It didn't go to waste. So, I just thought I'd make that comment.
There a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Moved by Mayra Hernandez, seconded by Arturo Dominguez. All those in favor? Any against? None heard, motion carries. We have a receipt. We are now adjourned. Thank you so much. Thank